And I was in there making trails, and there were some high school kids headed for the cave, and a little embarrassed. I looked bad. I mean, I'd been working for 2 days, and I was a little grungy. And they said, "Are you the Leatherman?" And you know, I didn't know how to take. I guess I was okay with it, but I may have just told them to buzz off. You know.
The Leatherman's Loop is not just something. It is not just some race. Like all great things, it was created, not made. And it survives because it is loved. Not just by one, but by thousands. It survives because it reminds us that there is more to life than concrete dreams. This is the story of the Leatherman's Loop. 25 years. Ward Pound Ridge Reservation is no ordinary place. Located north of New York City, this wooded oasis stretches over 4,300 acres, making it Westchester County's largest park. The soil is rich with history, and the trees bear witness to the life cycles that have come and gone. When the winds blow, and you listen closely, Ward Pound Ridge Reservation whispers its stories. Sometime in the 1980s, a man had some of his own stories and ideas that he wanted to share. Tony Godino gathered up some of his buddies, headed into the woods, and blazed through the trails. The four men ran longer and harder until they felt that their souls and the soil were one. In the woods they found refuge. In the woods they had peace. And in the woods is where they would bring people together.
Between 25 and 30 years ago, I got hooked up with Tony Godino and Dave Cope and Peter Thompson.
Pete Thompson is and has been a residential garbage man in Greenwich since college. He graduated from Ithaca College, took a job in the city for a year and hated it, and went back to his summer job picking up trash. And so Pete was picking up the boxes from the bike store, and we became friends. And he knew that I was a runner, and I knew that he was a runner. So we would run 2 or 3 times a week from the store on the roads in Old Greenwich. So I really connected with Pete first, and then Ken I met at the first backcountry bushwhack that I ran. I see this big, slightly overweight guy wearing a neck brace and smoking a fat cigar, and I figured, well, he's here to cheer somebody on, and we line up to start the race, and he tosses the neck brace in the bushes and stomps out the cigar, and I was shocked that he was going to run. And then first hill a mile into the race, the only steep hill on the course, he went by me like I was standing still, going uphill. I said, Jesus, the boy can run.
I was a partner in a store in Greenwich was Athletic Attic at the time. Now it's Threads and Treads. And we would put races on, but we always wanted to do it cross country because road running is like, it's a dime a dozen. Do you think anybody would show up and says, well, can we do this? Well, there's a guy owned 50 acres down there. His name was Fuzzy Perry off of John Street. And our guy, you don't know him, Mark McIntyre, says, Mark, how do we get in touch with this guy? He says, well, just go up and knock on his door. So we did. And for a while he owned the property, we had like 800 people show up the second year. So that's where that came from. Then he moved away because Greenwich used to give him such a hard time because he used to move his earth moving equipment and fly his airplane, and the town didn't like any of that stuff. So he eventually sold it, and then we were looking for, Tony owned the bike store and he likes to run, and we were looking for a space to do it, and we were always coming up here once or twice a week.
Dave became friends through Threads and Treads and through the whole race scene in Greenwich. I did a number of the road races that he put on, including, and then the trail race, the Bushwhack. So Dave and I became friends, and we all decided we wanted to really get to know Pound Ridge Reservation, like Christy and Jerry now know Pound Ridge Reservation.
I think most of the trails were existing. We had to make some modifications, but the trails were there. But it was just finding a great course for this kind of running. A lot of mud, a lot of rocks, a lot of water. It's I mean, for people who like to run in the woods, it doesn't get much better than that.
And they were receptive to it. And why, I don't know, because they had kicked out their orienteers, they had kicked out they had a folk festival they used to run up here, a few thousand people, in the same place where we start. Fiddle Fest, and they kicked them out. So why they were receptive to us is beyond me, but the first year we did it, we had 100 people.
It was a scene because everything happened right here in our home. Our house turned into, I don't even know what, because it was just Tony and I and Liz and Dave. So we were the crew to work it. So that means all the registration, fielding all the phone calls. So on the message machine, we had Tony and I, the kids, and every runner who wanted to call. This is how they found out. They would call us and the phone would ring. We'd have to leave the house, We drove the kids crazy. And we did all the preparation here. We did the work. Tony ran the course. Liz and I handled all the registration. We were the sweeps. I mean, there was no crew. Now we have, 40 volunteers or something. So it was full tilt.
Officially, there were 4 race directors, Dave and Liz Cope, Judy, and myself. And we co-directed. But fortunately, they all know me well enough to put up with all my crap. And we can have meetings and talk, and maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. But finally, I just say, this is what we got to do. And they kind of, hammer on, and it was fine.
As the sun rises over the empty field, there is a quiet calmness, which will soon give way to the lines of cars that will fill the area with runners, young and old. The sound of the tires on gravel fills the air.
We're getting dirty. We're getting down and dirty.
Familiar faces gather with new ones, and experiences are shared. On the day of the loop, there are no strangers. There are only friends.
Can't wait. No.
That's the Kimberly Bridge, right?
That's where the bridge is, right?
Water crossings are probably about average. You've got one of them, the new one, is up to about here. The current on the final water crossing will be a factor. You have to be a little bit careful. Could sweep you away. This guy got swept away a little bit. He ended up about 10 or 15 feet downstream after, but it was great.
This will be my 5th year. Every year is obviously different. This year's a little hotter, and my legs are a little tired from hiking yesterday, but it's a great community event where a lot of people from locally come around and run and have fun. Families, kids, everybody.
Bagpipes are heard as prayer flags flap in the wind. Runners know the call and head over to the start.
Because the world lives in, I told her, she'd be convinced that the state police were going to show up and she didn't tell the people.
No other race like this. This is the best. You got everything. You got mud, you got trails, you got grass, sand, you got hills, you got water. Can't you tell? It's a lot of fun. I have my friend right here.
Hey!
The runners grow silent as pre-race traditions take over. With Tony, it has become customary to expect something unique and inspiring at the beginning of the race.
You know, the last time I ran a race, it was pouring rain, it was cold, it was miserable, and Tony must have talked for 20 minutes. Like, Tony, shut up. Let's go.
You know, it was maddening to Dave Cope because I loved announcements and ceremony at the start. I mean, once a year, we got all these people in this beautiful setting. They're going to get to run, so why not take advantage of that opportunity and give them something special? Give them a poem, give them a song, give them some thoughts, give anything, give them an owl hooting. And Dave would say, just start the damn race, just start the damn race. In typical Dave style. And he's pulling his hair out. He hasn't got much left to pull, but he put up with me.
I don't have much to do with it. He was the one that really built it up with all mariachis and little peace flags and prayer flags and speeches, blessings from an Irish minister, and stuff like that. Is like, I would never think of doing something like that. I would keep it more bare bones. But it just makes it more like people come across the finish line, and more than a third of them are thanking us for doing it.
Special guest runner Micah True, a.k.a. Caballo Blanco from the New York Times best-selling book Born to Run, makes his second consecutive loop appearance. All four founders gathered together at the start for the first time in years. Although time has made its mark, they still show some spring in their step. For this year's race, Teokasin Ghost Horse, member of the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation and host of the First Voices Indigenous radio show, plays a traditional Native American song on his flute.
Teokasin Ghost Horse, here he is.
The first time we tried this experiment, because after I'd run it Tony asked me if I would start it, and I remember the first time we did that, I used a poem by E.E. Cummings, and it starts off, I thank you, God, for most this amazing day. And it was a nor'easter blowing, and it was rain coming horizontally, and people are, freezing, 38 degrees. And here's this nutcase up in the stepladder with a megaphone. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day. And people are, what is he doing? And then I kind of caught on. And I raised the level and made it like a chant. For the leaping, greenly spirit of trees. And somebody went, yo! For a true blue dream of sky, yeah! And by the end of it, everybody was yelling. So and so my favorite part is seeing how that has become a critical part. People love that. Beauty before me as I run. Beauty behind me as I run. Beauty below me as I run. Beauty below me as I run. Above me as I run. Beauty above me as I run. Beside me as I run. Beauty within me as I run. I see beauty all around me.
I see beauty all around.
And beauty may we walk. And beauty may we see. And beauty may we all be. Go for it. They feel it like it belongs to them. And I think it's an attempt to reflect the deeper experience that people have. It's not just a run, everybody says that. It's really an experience, a celebration of life. celebration of our awareness of life, maybe even more, and where we fit in. So that's why I love that particular part.
Now, there was a number of people that kept the legend alive before me, and it seems like every so many years, someone else comes forward to keep the legend alive, and it just happens to be my turn to keep the legend alive. Before me, there was Allison Elby from Westchester County, from the Westchester Historical Society, and he kept the legend alive in this area. There was Leroy Foote for 40 years. He was a researcher in Connecticut, and he kept the legend alive by going around to different schools and libraries and historical societies and giving talks on the old Leatherman. And of course, then they made a documentary about him in 1984 to keep the legend alive. And of course, we have the Leatherman Loop, which is the run that Tony has kept the legend alive, and that's 25 years old this year. And it's amazing because he kept the legend alive for 25 years.
I had been hearing his story all my life from different people. Some people who really knew about his life and knew where his caves were and factually knew. And other people who like to talk the parts of the story that really are not true and not factual, but are interesting just the same. So I knew, so the name, there was never any question about the name of the race. It was in Pound Ridge Reservation. He has a cave there. It's a loop, so it had to be the Leatherman's Loop. So I did name it. And if we could have incorporated the trail that goes up by the mouth of the cave in the race, we would have done it. But with the other trail features that we wanted to use, it wasn't doable for a 10K distance.
Vagabond, tramp, drifter. These are but a few of the descriptions that have crossed the lips of those that have come in contact with him. But it would be the Leatherman that would stick as his name. Outfitted from head to toe in leather, this would be the only true name that would be given to a still unidentified man. A man whose 34-day and 365-mile journey would cement his place in history. Sparta Cemetery, located in Ossining, New York, dates back to 1764 and is Westchester County's oldest cemetery. This historic landmark has 34 Revolutionary War veterans laid to rest within its grounds and would be the final stop on the historic journey of the Leatherman.
Would find the eggs.
Dan DeLuca, author, genealogist, and Meriden, Connecticut historian, has dedicated over 2 decades to uncovering the life and mysteries of the Leatherman.
He was taking care of himself. He was tanning leather. He was preserving food. He was gathering food, preserving it. And he would put the food in his bag, and he would go around to these different shelters, and he would put the food that he's already cured for the winter in all these different shelters. He was also tending gardens. He had gardens in different locations, and he was preserving the food from the gardens. And he would put them in the different shelters in the winter for the winter. And then in the wintertime, he would travel from one shelter to another shelter, and he had all the food that he needed for the entire winter. But again, I got to go back to the very beginning of the story. And that's when he was first seen in Connecticut, New York, around 1856. Between 1856 and 1882, he was all over Connecticut, all over New York, between the Connecticut and Hudson Rivers, up into Massachusetts, up into the Berkshires, up into Vermont, all the way up into Canada and back. And he did this up until about 1882, 1883. And that's when they started to build iron bridges, around 1880, iron bridges across a lot of the rivers. So now, when he got to a bridge, it would be there and not washed away. Then he started his 365-mile circuit every 34 days, around 1883. We have timetables. In the back of the book, I'm sure you have looked at that huge timetable we have, which started around 1883. And the other major, we have some smaller timetables before that, but 1883 seems to be the turning point. So from 1883 until he died on March 20th, 1889, He was walking this 365-mile clockwise circuit around Connecticut and New York, between the Connecticut and the Hudson Rivers, every 34 days until he passed away.
The whole idea of nothing being found in his grave, I thought was quite fitting, because no one knows anything about it. Everything is speculation about him. But he almost brought out the best in a lot of people, because everyone looked forward to him, even though he never spoke to anybody, couldn't speak to anybody. Everyone looked for him, and a lot of us are so wrapped up in what goes on that sometimes we wish we could just kind of wander.
The weather was perfect. Lots of sun, a little bit of an April chill to keep energies high, and enough spring fever to have legs eager to run. After a rough winter in the Northeast, and some thinking the snow would never melt, the sight of dirt and seeable pathways made any runner feel a little bit faster.
I've seen this design, different colors.
Yeah, that was the first year we used it, and then we used it again, but we went neon. And I think these are pretty much, I have 91, I think these are pretty much, some of them have, I think that was the first year we used the duck. First year we used the tree. Tim drew the tree from a photograph that Judy took, and he drew it exact, every little twig and branch is what was there from the photograph. That's the way Tim works. And he always puts in his little animal friends, including the owl. 93. This is another Tim design with those little critters and the Leatherman, mixing it up with him. This is the only shirt that I actually had input in the design. I wanted this photo. At the time, this was one of only 6 known photos of the Leatherman, and the most popular one. And then Tim threw in supposedly this was leather patches for the wording. 96.
10 years.
We would just kind of make mental notes and talk about highlights in the park. Specifically, the big sandhill was a given that had to be included. We had some discussion up or down. Okay, so that's another whole. Yeah, and I won't tell you who wanted the down, but that's another story. And then we had the small sand pit, which eventually we had to take out of the course to protect the rattlebox plant, which we did. That was a given. The log crossing was a given, because you could run this log full stride if you had a good sense of balance. You could actually jump on the log without breaking stride and cross the river at what is now the first river crossing, full stride. And I said, that's cool. So, and then the mud flats were not as muddy as they are now, but I figured you got to have the mud flats. That was because Ken used to wear these white Sport Hill or Ron Hill running tights, and I used to love to see him fall in the mud flats. It made my day.
The mud is terrific. The mud is just fun. You get dirty, you get sloppy. And then the trails that are dry, that aren't either, the trails that are dry are just crappy. You have to jump back and forth to try and get some kind of footing. And I mean, that whole mix of stuff is just, I mean, and I told this guy from the paper this morning, it's like, in a very few words, it's perfect for trail running because it's got everything. It's got mud, it's got dry, it's got rotten stuff, it's got some beautiful trails.
But it had a couple of features that that you just don't normally get. That's the pine forest over there at mile 4 to 5 is just a phenomenal way to come down off the hill. And you know, it was just we were running, and we call it 10K. It ain't 10K. It's like 6 3/4 miles, but that would just scare people off. So we just rigged it together, measured it,
and so then we pieced it together, and we knew it was approximately 10 kilometers. And in the early years, we started the runners from the parking lot, and then we decided it got too crowded too fast, so we moved them back to where the start is today. And you know, the trail, the course has been changed, and for the most part lengthened, probably 5 times over the years. And so the records are not scientific. I would give Mark McIntyre clearly the short course record with 35 minutes. I'd give Dave Dunham the intermediate course record, which he thinks is the existing course record, but that's another story. And I would give Tommy Nohilly's fastest time the existing course record, because I know with certainty that every race that Nohilly has done, the course has been the same. So that we know. I don't think that Dave Dunham ran that exact course. I think there were a couple of changes where we lengthened it. So now it's set. I don't see any reason to ever change the course. But we might.
This is about 4,000 acres. We've run through most of it. They've got a really good orienteering map that shows all the trails, and we've got to know it so well. It's such a nice open park, you can run off the trail, so we would just find places to run. But it was the water that made us do it down there. This side of the park is actually prettier to run through, but it doesn't have the water. And in the springtime, the trees always look kind of nice.
So, but anyway, so we figured, well, let's do it. And then I actually, in the stuff that I gave you, there's a letter that Dave wrote to the Commissioner of Parks for Westchester, seeking permission to stage a race. That was a year before the first race, and then it got put on hold. There's also a letter that I gave to every finisher of the Bushwhack. I handed out, I put the moose head on, because I didn't want any issues with Mickey Artis promoting a new trail race at his existing trail race. So Tim made me a paper mache moose head, and I got to the end of the driveway for the race and gave out 700 forms about the Leatherman's Loop.
And we had no idea of what they came up with, because we did the Bushwhack, and I figured it can't be worse than the Bushwhack. I mean, Bushwhack, the first ones up in Greenwich, were bad. It was a 5-mile loop. It was very difficult. And we figured, it couldn't be any worse than that. Well, little did we know what they had planned with the tree, the river crossings, and you had to cross over a river with a tree, and they had no bridges back then, so it was all through the mud. I mean, just through the skunk cabbage. Came back smelling like skunks.
Most of us knew each other. We all were friends of Tony and the rest of the gang. We said, hey, this is going to be fun. Let's get up there. I wouldn't let my son run that year. I said, no, Doug, I don't know, if you can handle this course. He was 10 then. The next year, when he was 11, I said, okay, you can go and run. So he's run 21 of the 25.
Depending on the weather leading up to the race, the first water crossing's manageability is anyone's guess. Originally bridged by a log, which has long been swept away, This crossing can be somewhat deep, somewhat rapid, and almost always slippery.
I like all the stream crossings, again, because my background, I like to get the challenge of trying to get through that water as fast as possible. And I just like to get in there and get out as quickly as I can. I go and I assess my kind of path that I'm going to take, morning of or day before, and I really like to kind of challenge myself to see how quickly I can get through there.
Making its debut in 2010, Sullivan's Surprise was another addition to the race that literally threw runners for a loop. Of all the water crossings, this one is the deepest and longest, making a runner's stride into more of a runner's wade. The addition of this third water crossing is just one way that the loop organizers continue to keep runners on their toes. Bagpipes sound and cheers are heard. The final water crossing, known as the pit, is where runners have an audience for them to showcase their enthusiasm and perhaps their skill. With only a quarter mile or so to go, caution is thrown to the wind as runners jump, dive, and find new interesting ways to excite the crowd.
This is one of the stone wall crossings. I think there's only two crossings. This is not Cannonball's Wall. Cannonball's Wall is where George took a spill and ended up needing a number of stitches in his head.
George Cannonball Buchanan.
George
Cannonball.
Cannonball.
Yeah.
And why do they call you Cannonball?
2 reasons. Big stomach, and one year I tripped when I was leading the race and went face first into a stone wall. So now I got a stone wall named after me.
He came back to pick up his car after being stitched up at the hospital and was still wearing his number. And up until that point, he'd always gotten number 5, or was assigned number 5. And he asked me, he said, one favor, he said, can I have number 5 again? And I said, you can have number 5 forever. He said, no, I mean this number 5. And he shows it to me, and it's covered with a little blood. He's a tough guy. Ink Man, they call him sometimes. Cannonball, most think he got the name because he goes out so fast. As a runner now in his mid-50s, he's running with the kids. But I think he got the name because for years he had a round belly, and it looked like he had a cannonball under his singlet. And people just called him Cannonball. But he was winning races, so can't fault that.
The Doug Gorman Mudflats greet the runner after the only aid station in the race. If unfamiliar with this portion of the course, the runner can easily be fooled that the worst is over before it has yet begun.
I'm running along with this guy who I never met before, and as we're running, we're talking and we're kind of challenging each other. And he pulls ahead and I pull ahead. We're sort of pretty even in our running, and I think I placed 20th place in the first year. We get to the mudflats, and he's slightly behind me, and all of a sudden he shouts out an expletive. And I said, are you okay? Did you fall? He says, no, I lost my shoe. And I said, you need help? He says, no, go ahead, I'll catch up to you. Well, I finished the race, and he still wasn't there. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, here comes this guy running in, never did find the shoe. He finished the rest of the race from the mudflats, which is about 3 miles, halfway through the race of the race with 1 shoe. So I said, that's got to be the best place on the course.
We're standing on a bridge that Dave Cope and I built about 15 years ago. This was a concern because you really couldn't do an open water crossing here because of the drop-off. Of course, everyone knows our primary concern has always been for the safety of the runners. So The park gave Dave and I permission to build this bridge. We talked them into buying the lumber, which they did, and I came back here with a generator and chop saws and table saws and nail guns, and in one day we had this bridge thrown together. And my brother, who's a structural engineer, gave me the specs, and it's holding together so far.
Whose idea was the sandhill?
Tony's. I'm sure it was Tony. And that's, 25 years ago we used to run that thing. Today I went up it and I was like, God, I started walking after about 3 steps. And I got to the top, and then I stood up and I leaned back just a rest before I got to the top, and I almost fell over backwards. So I remember the first time Tony took me down that the first time. It was the middle of winter. The thing was frozen, and we went over the top. And my first step, I hit ice, and that was the only step I took on it. I ended up at the bottom in a pile. But it gets people's attention.
Every day's a different day for a mariachi. We did a pub crawl in Boston last night.
Oh. So you got an early start this morning.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
I was okay though, I really was. Usually try not to plan early games right after pub crawls, but it worked out. Man, much better day than the last time we were here, Tony.
Oh, it was horrible last time, and you came all the way down here, and you really couldn't do much because of the weather. I had set up a little pop-up tent the night before because I knew it was going to rain. I figured, well, they could play in the tent. And then I went out, I marked the course. It was windy, and I get back to the parking lot. The tent is like tied in a knot. The wind picked it up and jumbled all the bars were bent. The fabric was torn. I just put it right in the dumpster. Wow.
The Sandhill, as it is notoriously known, was originally one of 2. The first one, during earlier incarnations of the loop, was taken out, so this left the one long, lone sandy climb, which has become the love-hate inanimate rock star of the Leatherman's Loop. The Sandhill, at the halfway point of the race, is the proverbial wall that must be overcome by the runner. In order to be successful, you must claw your way out.
I always kind of reserve myself a little bit for that sandhill because that takes a lot out of your legs. It's soft, the ground just gives away. I end up crawling on my hands and feet like an animal instead of running on my 2 feet. So that's usually a doozy. That takes a lot out.
You have to get on your hands and knees and climb up that thing. But after that, I just tell myself, now the race starts.
It's loose-fitting, potato-sized rocks, a lot of sand, and steep, but not that long. But it's for the most part, and I've been here for a number of the races, most people can't and don't maintain a running pace going up this hill, with a few exceptions, namely Nohilly, Sullivan, Kerry Arsenault, and the like. So in the early years, for the first 5 years, we gave King and Queen of the Hill prizes to the first male and female runner to crest this hill, and we stopped doing it because the race winners, male and female, were always the first ones to the top of the hill, so we figured, what's the point? But it's a hill.
Helping people out, bringing food, and I don't know, commemorating the Leatherman.
Oh my God, it's beautiful because the course is so pretty and it's all sacred. And then, you know, you're just slopping through the mud. Time doesn't matter. Everybody's having fun. Everybody's asking one another, are you okay? Let's keep going.
I love it. Great job, guys.
I always love the pine forest. It's my favorite part of the course. It's like it's downhill mostly, it's soft, and I know the end is near.
No matter the pain that has led up to this point, it is here that the runner feels a sense of calmness. It is here, in the pine forest, where the runner, regardless of pace, becomes the runner they see in their mind's eye. The pine forest is where the runner is set free and becomes one with the woods. In the pine forest, we are all runners. In the pine forest, we are all one.
There's two things that the runners may pick up on. First off, the lighting is different. There's a magical element to the lighting in here. There always has been, and the air feels different. And if you're sensitive to either of those things, you pick up on it. But it's just anytime you have a single track trail blanketed or covered with pine needles that gradually slopes and winds its way downhill, it's just too good from a runner's perspective.
I like the pine forest at mile 4. Why? Because it's a perfect running downhill. It's not too steep. It's soft. Very few roots, and you can really open up right there. And that's pretty much where the race is. The race is over by that point. You got a mile and a half to go, and it's all flat and downhill after that. So it's pretty much you get to the top of that, and the race is pretty much over.
Once you crest the top of the last big climb, and then you go into the forest, I just love picking up the scent of the pine. It's just very uplifting.
The part I love is the pine forest, because there's soft footing and there's a clear path, and you have the pine needles underneath you and the pine trees next to you, and you run, and it's just beautiful.
These are the old poster boards through 2004. So when we switched over to electronic, and I think, what do you think, about 50 pounds worth?
It takes me 2 trips.
You can throw your back out,
Yeah.
try to carry them around. I used to have them on display in the park so people could go through them. Now they go online and punch a button and there's everything.
They had 1150 finished.
11:50 finished, okay. How do you account for that?
I don't know. A lot of people, it's their only race a year.
Yeah.
And it's the only, and you don't run. I've run cross country since high school, and it's very hard to find a place to do it where you have parking. You know, if you're going to get 50 people, that's fine, but that's not worth the effort for just 50 people. And although I think 1,000 people is too much, but
I mean, to a degree, the overwhelming interest is suffocating it a little bit. It's hard for me to turn one person away and deny one person entry, let alone hundreds of people. And for me, there's an emotional price to that, but there's no way around it. And so that's been a hard thing.
They used to do everything by hand. You know, they liked the sort of rustic or, bare bones aspect. They'd pull the tags, stick them on a board, go down, write everybody's, fill the age groups out, score it that way. And once it hit like 400 or 500, they realized it was too big. But they wanted to go to computerized scoring and timing, but they didn't want to bring in a quote unquote outsider. So they figured I was like semi-family, that I'd be able to bring the technology without losing the spirit of the race.
How did you do that?
I don't know. It's pretty unobtrusive, really. I think they were just worried about it. And I mean, one of the things that I also kind of talked Rob and Mike into was going to online registration, because I think that's sort of just the trend that everybody's following now.
I mean, I like back in the old days, geez, I'd run into people in the trails and I'd say, hey, you know, the loop is next week. Why don't you come out? You know, and they'd sign up that day, and it was so informal. And those days are long gone. But the spirit has grown off the charts.
It's just low key. Like, we don't use any sponsors. You know, the race pays for itself. And I just think it's, I don't know, what would you say?
It's because it closes out now. As soon as the race closes out, everybody wants in.
Yeah.
It's like Boston or any.
Yeah, now it makes an exclusive club. And some of these people have done it, you know, dozens of times. And they just come back every year and they tell two people, and they tell two people, and before you know it, you know, people are showing up.
In third place, 17 from Pound
In
Ridge,
2007, Tony, Judy, Dave, and Liz turned the Loop director reins over to fellow Bedford resident and Loop runner Mike Paletta. Mike, along with his wife Kate and friend Rob Cummings, follow tradition and continue to keep this grassroots run a success.
I see myself, if I have a philosophy, years ago I decided that you can't really do the steering as you go through life. People think they're steering, they think they're in control, they think they're making all the right decisions, they're going to think about it, they're going to figure it out. And I'm of the school that let the intelligence of the universe tell me what's right to do, okay? And the intelligence of the universe told me it's time to step back, because my running was dormant at the time. I had practically stopped running. Dave and Liz wanted out, so I think I had to respect that. Judy was kind of on the fence, although she'd always be there to support me. And Mike Paletta showed up with all of this incredible enthusiasm and about 300 friends, and paying for a brunch, hosting food for 100 runners after the race out of his own pocket, and pitching a tent and having, I mean, just off the charts enthusiasm.
After I ran it once, and like I said, I would always bring in as many friends and newcomers to run this race. I mean, me and my wife, that's what we did. If you haven't run the loop and we know you're going to run the loop.
First year was 2003, and Mike Paletta was the one who somehow convinced me to do it. He was, I was in a class with him at the Sawmill Club and a bunch of other people, and he said he came into the class in February with these, you know, race sign-up forms, and he had started getting all of this class into 5Ks and 10Ks and the beachfront bushwhack and those type of races. And he said, this is the one you have to do. If you're going to do any race, you have to do this race.
We kind of merged our group of friends with Tony's group of friends and the volunteers. You know, we became part of the loop. And, you know, I remember I was just upstairs looking at some details. I remember when Tony announced that this was going to be this year's was going to be the last loop. You know, I went ballistic. And I think I had my own video camera. I think that was the first time someone videoed the loop. I wasn't running that year. I was sick, and I was running around with my video camera, and I distinctly remember saying that there's no way they're going to stop this guy from running this race. I said, Tony Godino's too good of a man. His intentions are too good. Everything he does is too good. There's no way Westchester County will stop this race. And so as we got more involved, when Tony was ready to give up some responsibility, you know, it was just a natural progression. I think sometimes you make decisions just based on what's right, not thinking about, you know, what I prefer to do. Of course, I would love to run the race, and I miss running the race, but, you know, I'm just connected to the race, so it was just normal to take that responsibility.
And then when Mike took it over in 2007, I think he asked me in 2007 if I wanted to help out with the technology, because I think at the time he said, I'm not really all that much with the internet and the web, and I said, well, well, give me your email address so I can, I can communicate with you. And he kind of looked at me and goes, I don't have an email address. So I said, okay, this man needs help. This definitely needs help. So that's some of my background. I could pitch in, but it's actually a testament to Tony that it took two people to replace what he was doing. So,
and Mike says, I know this guy Ram. He did the video, and I think he'd be good. Maybe he's interested in doing the computer part and corresponding and all of that stuff. And so he came in, and he's been on board ever since. He does all the work. Rob really does all the work. I come up with the bizarre ideas, and Mike does some of the nuts and bolts stuff, and he loves to write the donation checks, help pick out the charities and stuff. So it's all good. I mean, it's good on all levels.
Any email that comes in, unless it's, unless they're threatening legal action or whatever, I usually feel comfortable answering it myself. Not that anyone's doing that, but it's usually quite, routine questions. Close to the loop, it's can I get in, or what's the loop like? What should I wear? Things like that.
When you run the loop, you just feel energized, you feel spiritual, you feel connected, and that's why we grabbed as many people as we could grab to run the loop. And then we would celebrate after that with a brunch that started at our house and just grew and grew. And that celebration was to continue that feeling throughout the day and celebrate it. It wasn't just to get out there and do a 6.2 mile trail run. There's so much more to the loop, and always energized us, and carried on after the loop. And that's why we've always been so excited and tried to recruit as many people as possible. And we still get that excitement every year. And I always love the newcomers, the first time runners, and see how it grabs them and how excited they get.
The relationship to it changed a little bit, and it's like grandparenting. Like, you can really, really enjoy your grandkids and be different than you were with your kids. So now, like, Mike, as the new director, really has the responsibility, although I don't think Tony will ever feel that, he can really relax and really just go for it as far as surprises, whatever he wants to do. I think it just took something off of his mind that he had to consider when of course we're all responsible, but have that full responsibility of pulling it off. And after 24 years, I think he just wanted to be in it, or 22 years, just have a different position. It's like the CEO who leaves and now he's just a consultant, right? So he gets to put his 2 cents in everywhere, right? But he's not responsible to to certain things, and it shifted everything. And I think Tony is more involved in some ways because he's more of a friend liner than and he's still a leader, but it has shifted. That's a good question. It's very true, and I think we're both more relaxed about it, and that's good too.
It's a mood. It's a moment. And it cannot be bottled up and sold. You have to experience it. Not through someone else's tales. Not through someone else's pictures. You have to come and feel it for yourself. Be part of it. Let it swallow you up. Let it make you feel invincible. Let it make you feel alive. Let it remind you where we came from, where we return to. A race, you say? No, this is not just a race. This is not just something. This is the Leatherman's Loop, and it needs to be experienced.
I know what makes me come back, because I love the place. I love Pound Ridge. I love Tony. I love Dave. I love Petey, but Petey doesn't show up very often. And I love trail running. And I guess what this race does is to expose people to what we have loved, the four of us have loved for years, and other people get connected to it.
It's the greatest event I've ever been to in my life. I mean, last year was my first actual run, and after starting running, on the road, the trail run sort of thing really just brings me back. I don't even run on the road anymore, you know, if I can avoid it. But it's you know, it's a fun event. The trail is great, and the people are just wonderful. The energy is really cool here.
It's just fun, you know. You get the mud, you get the rocks, the roots. There's a lot of people in this race. I enjoy it. You know, it's like being a kid again. It's a way to have an excuse to act like a kid and have, you know, allow yourself to be free.
Just the beauty of this place and the my running companions. They all do it. I always bring back a running virgin into this race, one who has never run this, because I love seeing the shock in their face. But most of them love it. So, and they keep coming back. So, it's just a great race.
This is the most fun you can possibly have as an adult, outside of other things. I'll put something else in first place. But it is so much fun. I've run races all over the United States, in almost every state. I've run races in many of the foreign countries. I rate this race in my top 5 of all the races that I love to run. It's a beautiful course. The people who put it on are terrific people. The people who come to it are terrific. It's a different kind of race. It's not like a road race. Although you do have road racers that come here, you have more committed runners that come to this. Really enjoy the nature part, the environmental kind of things, and also running through a beautiful place.
And I think that's the sentiment. In beauty may we all be. We are in beauty. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Or sometimes we forget that, or we get so overwhelmed by life or distracted. So I think this loop and what the prayer or blessing, whatever you want to call it, reflects is how important it is to have this kind of experience and to be nurtured in this way in the face of the things we have today, the challenges, you know, about the economy, just making it through. A lot of people are anxious and worried. I mean, you just listen to the news today, whether it's about the market or about, will I ever have a job again, and so on. So we need all the inspiration and energy and guidance, I think, that the Leatherman's Loop implies.
The idea of being out here and really taking to heart some of the things that even talk about before the race starts is, you know, getting out to nature, really appreciating what the race is all about. And at the start, I really, you know, take that to heart and try to get into a space that, even when during the race, I try to remind myself that take all this in, you know, and enjoy this moment, because it really is, you know, a gift to just be out here doing it, especially for me at my age of 45, to still be able to go out here and run as well as I still can. And, you know, I really think that's, you know, a special gift just to be out here. And so I really try to take it all in that way. You know, it's really a great experience.
All newcomers go into it as if it's a race, you know, because, you know, a lot of people talk to me like, what should I wear? What do I do? Do I go? And, you know, I try and tell them that just don't, you know, take the watch and throw it out. Take everything that you've ever lined up at a race with and get rid of it, because that's not what this is going to be like. And they go through it, and it's just when you come up the final hill and you see, you know, the tree that's now like a playground for kids, and they have the Buddhist flag, you know, near the finish line and everything. Everyone finishes it just, you know, it sounds hokey but almost changed, you know, the whole concept of what they ran for and everything is different, and they want to share that with everyone they know, and they want to bring everyone else into the family. You know, unfortunately you have to limit the numbers, but, you know, I guess if we get too crazy, then it goes to the Leatherman will come kick us out of the park or something.
If it wasn't for Tony's passion, and I mean, this is really Tony's, you know, a lot of us were like, we were ancillary. We were there, but this was Tony's passion, and I'm forever grateful to Tony for pushing this and making it happen, because he's really the driving force behind all this.
I personally, as a runner and as a trail runner, was way over my head being joined by Dave Cope, Ken Littlefield, and Pete Thompson. I mean, Copey finished second in the escarpment trail one year and should have won it. Ken has successfully completed 400-mile trail races, including Western States, and gotten belt buckles, and won a 70-mile Sri Chinmoy race. And Pete Thompson was a sub-230 marathoner, so it's not my league. But I got in good shape.